Question: what happens when a teenage boy follows in his uncle's footsteps and ends up a pro wrestler? Answer: he goes from child to colossal. This episode, I'll have the Colossal one, Mike Law, with me, and that's today on the Tristen Law Show. Welcome to the Tristen Law Show, where I introduce you to the personalities in and out of the pro wrestling ring. The unique part is you don't have to be a pro wrestling fan to enjoy this podcast. If it's your first time here, buenvenido. Buenvenido, is that right? Either way, new episodes drop Wednesday. That's right. New podcast, who dis? Okay, it's not a new podcast. I'm Tristen Law, but in case you couldn't tell, I've done a little bit of a spring cleanup. And I tell you this as there's snow outside on the ground. And if you know anything about me, you know that I hate snow. But tell me what you think about the changes on social media and at TristenLawShow.com. If you've previously listened to episodes before, you've heard me talk about where and when I left pro wrestling for a little bit. When I started itching to come back, I started seeing this guy named Mike Law and wondered, who the hell is this guy using my name? Because obviously two people with the same last name cannot coexist on the indie scene, especially in New Jersey, New York. But don't worry, I got over it. Mike Law, that's my dude. He's my Kayfabe cousin, to be exact. Well, this episode, you're going to know who the hell Mike Law is, as we talk about how he got into pro wrestling, wrestling internationally in the Dominican Republic, how he built his confidence using pro wrestling, and much more. I'll be right back with the Colossal one, Mike Law. I am Tristen Law, and this is the Tristen Law Show.
Hello to all of you Tristen Law Show podcast listeners. This is Frank Mandolini. You may not recognize this voice. I am the Italian podcaster who talks about the business side of wrestling. Yeah, I know, it's quite niche. But if you look for last minute wrestling podcast on all of your social media and wherever you get your podcast, you'll be amazed to find interviews with people such as Rob Van Dam or Matthew Gregg from Botchamania and many others, so you get to know many aspects of the wrestling business that normally you don't hear in wrestling podcasts. Because let's face it, who wants to hear another guy talk about Monday Night Raw? Yeah, me neither. So guys, go to lmwpodcast.com or search for LMW Podcast everywhere in the interweb. And remember guys, this is Frank Mandolini from the Last Minute Wrestling Podcast, and you stay safe.
Welcome back to the Tristen Law Show, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging around and just waiting patiently, because like I promised, I'm going to have my next guest at this time. And my next guest at this time started his professional wrestling career at the age of 15 years old, following in the footprints of his uncle, who was a referee. At this time, I'd like to introduce you to my Kayfabe cousin, the Colossal one, Colossal Mike Law. What's going on, Kayfabe cousin? How are you, man? What's going on?
Hey. I'm doing very well, Kayfabe cousin.
That's right. Hey, you're my Kayfabe cousin. I don't care. That. I don't care what anybody tells me. You're my Kayfabe cousin. Even though what we've probably met once in real life, and I still call you my Kayfabe cousin because we have the same last name. It's like the Dudleyvilles, right? So. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we met once in maybe Pro Wrestling Magic, right?
Yes. Okay, twice.
Or maybe
Capital and Pro Wrestling Magic,
because that was BW. Yes, Capital Wrestling. Now Catalyst, and then
right.
And then Pro Wrestling Magic, correct? Right. Yep.
Did you ever wrestle for BWO?
No, I knew a lot of people there. I may have gone there once to train a few years ago, but no, I never wrestled for them.
Good. Okay. Well, I'm still trying to find out how we've both been in the wrestling business in almost the same era for so long, and we've never crossed paths until a few years ago. If you ask me, I think it's crazy. Like, you're only in New York, and I live in New York, but I live in the upstate New York, maybe about an hour from the Bronx, an hour south of Poughkeepsie. And I go to Jersey a lot because Jersey's so much closer for me to wrestle than to go down to New York City. But even though it's not far, we've never met each other in real life until recently.
Right. I mean, it's just like, it's funny because when it's not like the only time I've been in situations where just people that I've come across are like, oh, I live in this part of New York, and I thought they were like someone from Pennsylvania, or some people tell me, oh, you're a Jersey guy or you're a Pennsylvania guy, or and then it's like, no, I've been living in New York my entire life pretty much. So, it's that kind of I guess situation where, as small as the wrestling business is, there are times where just certain paths never cross.
Mike, I remember learning about you when I was on hiatus, and I'm like, who the hell is this guy using my name? And granted, you've probably been around 5 years before me, but I remember seeing you and going, oh, I like this guy. Maybe one day we can be a tag team. So what is it that made you want to step into the wrestling ring?
So, I mean, I think, when people talk about the first match, I was a huge Hulkamaniac, but when I talk about the first match I ever saw live and that made me want to get into wrestling as a professional wrestler, it was Ricky Steamboat versus Randy Savage inside of a steel cage in Madison Square Garden. Like, the lineage, as far as my family, my grandfather, who died the year I was born, he was a huge diehard wrestling fan. But then he had, like, the year I was born, he died probably 5 or 6 months after the fact. And then, like, it was within the family, like, it was in our blood. Like, my uncle from my dad's side, he was a referee for a local independent. And then I guess one of the wrestlers at the time had heat with him for whatever reason, and then broke a Heineken bottle over his head, like, without telling you, just and just that's the way I guess things were done back in the day. They just if they had beef, they were going to settle it one way or another, and cracked him legitimately over the head with a Heineken bottle and put him out. Like, he's always, I mean, he's still a diehard wrestling fan, but he never got back into wrestling as a referee or anything else after that because, I guess that's what happened, and, but then I met a promoter years down the line. I was 15 years old. And I mean, like I said, I think after watching that match and watching that cage match, it sunk in my head. I want to be a pro wrestler, you know what I mean? And to me, I was always a small guy, and we'll go, I guess, get into Colossal about the idea behind that whole thing later on. But, it never dawned on me. I never saw myself as a small guy. I never did. I always walked around, feeling like I was 7 feet tall and walking around like I couldn't be bullied and walking around like, not like an egomaniac, but more like, like I knew I was like tough mentally, physically, but that I could, like I just wasn't going to be a kind of guy that I remember playing football in grade school and it took 4 people to take me down. And I remember thinking like, that was just my mentality. I just walked around like I was a big guy and not being a pro wrestler was never going to be, it was never going to be in my future. I was destined to do this,
It's funny that you talk about height as well, too. Like, I remember a couple of years ago, I mean, obviously when you started as well, too, height was a major thing. Oh, if you're not the proper height, you're never going to make it. And the thing that I look at today is now it really doesn't matter how tall you are or what your body looks like. As long as you can work and you can invoke the emotion in an audience, people will book you in. You have an opportunity to go to that next level. Because even for me, like, even though on the indies, 9 times out of 10, I'm usually a bigger guy in height and weight, because I've been eating a lot during the pandemic. But that's not the point. But if we go to the next level, like, I'm a giant. I'm only a normal sized guy if I was to ever go to the WWE or AEW or something like that. So, I'm glad that you didn't let your height stop you, and you always fought, as an underdog to do that. Did you have any issues when you were first getting into the business because of your perceived height?
Absolutely. I almost think it's changed to a detriment at times, and listen, to each their own, but it's a lot that goes into that mentality as far as like, any body type, anything like that, any size. Like, when I was coming up, I was 15 years old. I was 5'4", maybe. 5'3". I remember I was listed on the New York State Athletic Commission, and like 110 pounds. I tried out for the wrestling team, and I didn't make it. So I always loved wrestling, but I felt I feel now that amateur wrestling is a good catalyst, a good basis for like pro wrestling, any type of MMA background. I think it's something that needs to be instituted again in training for everybody. I think that's something that needs to be brought back in terms of having some form of legitimacy in case somebody tries to mess with you. You always have, whether it's in the ring or outside of it. But that's another conversation. But going back to the size thing, man, like mentally, I just I was constantly like beat up. Like I'm not gonna sit here and lie and like say I dominated people. No, man. Like back when I started in 1998. It was still an era of time where like Rey Mysterio was still very new to the industry in the sense of not in the industry, but in the sense of in the mainstream, I should say. In the mainstream, Rey Mysterio was still new. He had just gotten to WCW. So guys being as small as me were very rare, but they didn't want that because the thing is, ultimately, wrestling at that point was still about, you had to be a certain height, a certain weight, a certain look, a certain physique. You know what I mean? You had to lift weights. You had to if you weren't doing that, you were probably a heavy set guy, and I'm, like you were gargantuan. So I would get in the ring like every week, and I was certainly the smallest guy. I mean, at 110 pounds, I wasn't gonna bully anybody, but I was, I had to earn my stripes, man. And some people are like, well, it's one of those things where, did you ever feel people took advantage of you in the ring? Well, yeah, but at the same time, it also taught me to fight back because I wasn't going to punk down to anybody. I had to go in there and I had to take my lickings. I had to take my beatings, but I also wanted to showcase to everyone that no matter what happened, I was going to come back, and I always did. You know what I mean? And I think it's a lot of mental, toughness. I think it's a lot of physical toughness. That probably isn't, what it is today. You know what I mean? It's a different change of pace. But, yeah, of course I had to overcome, man. And I tell myself that all the time. I go, I, for a short time, was being way too nice to people who probably didn't deserve it. And, I think if anything's changed mentally in the last few months is that whole concept. Like, I had to fight for everything. I was never given anything. I'm still not given anything. You know what I mean? Nothing's been handed over to me on a silver platter. I don't have a famous dad, who has, I don't have that lineage in terms of like a name value. I've had to earn everything. So I have to start implementing that in my mentality when it comes to anyone I'm wrestling. So that's what, that's just my mentality going forward. I go, I wasn't handed anything. I had to literally fight and scrape and get to get anything in the wrestling business. And, whether it upsets people or not, that's my mentality going forward. If it's not, it's just like, you got to take it from me, and that's got to be it.
So talk about toughness physically and mentally. A lot of people who watch what we do on TV or come pay money and see what we do, they go, oh my God, that's like, it looks easy. But, rest assured, people listening, that professional wrestling is not easy. It's one of the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. And if I get in the ring and I make it look easy, or any of my peers get in the ring and make it look easy, and Mike, I think you could agree as well too. If we make it look easy, it's because we're good at what we do. It's not easy at all.
Yeah. I actually get the opposite, to be honest. Most of the time I get people who say, man, I have to respect what you do. You guys do, like, you put your, like, yes, I do believe that we've overexposed to things about the industry that we probably should have kept in the back pocket for people not to see. You know what I mean? I think there's certain things that should have been left unsaid, but at the same time, I think there is a respect for what we do in the sense that people know that it is physically demanding, that we do have to put our bodies and our, and our necks, literally and figuratively speaking, on blind in order to still elicit a reaction and an emotion, because people have a more, I guess, knowledgeable outlook of what we do. And for better or worse, I think the thing that's happened, what I get, the feedback I get after a match from fans has been, I have to tip my hat off to you, or give you utmost respect, because you put in the work and it shows, and there's a difference. And that's the thing that to me, sometimes it does frustrate me. You know, I'm not going to sit here, Tristen, tell you that I don't look at it from a grander perspective. I see guys on TV, and I see certain people on TV, and I go, you know, that's the thing. If everyone could do what we do, then everyone could be doing it.
Right.
But the problem is that I think we've made it seem that way, and it's not. It's not, man. Like, I have friends who've broken bones. I know you have. You yourself have known people who've broken, you know, body parts. You know, one of my great friends, Spiral BKY, God rest his soul, broke his neck. So I know the risk involved in what we do, and sometimes I get to myself, I go, you know, some of these people, like, they make it seem like anyone can, but no, because not everyone can do it.
Right.
And if things were to change, like if people were to be put through the drilling and the workouts and the type of stuff that was put through years ago, and I'll say this, I went to go training two weeks back to back, and I'm going back again, obviously just kind of getting reacclimated with getting in the ring and getting my conditioning up. If you go to Kakoa's gym out in the Poconos in Pennsylvania, Work Rate Entertainment, or go to ECPW, you train with guys like Mike Donovan, Aaron Bradley, and Azrael. Like, those guys are machines. Like, if people can go and do training with those guys and have to do the drills, and if that was something that was constantly being done, you wouldn't see as many of the people around. If it was something that was mandated across the board, yeah, you wouldn't see a lot of people around.
You're right.
It's a different term of toughness. That's, you know, I don't know if it's there or not, but it's certainly different.
So a lot of my listeners, Mike, aren't wrestling fans and are interested in you as a person. So please describe your gimmick to someone who may have never seen a wrestling show. Who is Mike Law?
So I think it has to be prefaced with Colossal Mike Law, even though for whatever reason, a lot of companies either get the spelling incorrect or just don't want to misspell it. The idea behind Colossal Mike Law is just what I said earlier. In my mind, it was I never saw myself as a 5'6", 165-pound guy. It never registered to me, and that I was that height. I always, in my mind, always brought myself as this larger than life individual. So colossal, obviously meaning gargantuan, big, is the mentality of this individual, Mike Law, who thinks he's 6'7", 651 pounds. And that's it. I walk around with a big barbell all day. I was in Times Square yesterday for some shoot videos and some promos and stuff like that, and photo shoots. I think that's the easiest way to describe it. You know, is the mentality of someone who really believes he's a grandiose giant in a world that's legitimately filled with a lot of, you know, larger than life individuals.
What are the differences between Colossal Mike Law, the wrestler, and Mike Law, the man?
Not much. You know what I mean? I think a lot of times you take what it is about the person that you are, and you make that person, that character, I guess, you know, who you are, but tenfold, you know? So that's who I am, you know what I mean? Like, I've always, you know, just walked around. I remember even as a promoter, when I used to promote back in, you know, a few years ago for FWE Wrestling, I just walked around, not with a sense of egoism, but more of a sense of, like, I was, you know, I don't know, just I like to have a presence, you know. I like to. It's something that's very important to me, not only as a wrestler, but somebody who looked at talent as well. Like this person have a presence. I think Mike Law, the individual, is more of a quiet individual. Doesn't, you know, I can be a lot more outlandish, but it's literally me being me, but like 10 times that person. I think when it's stuff like that, you know, there's things that you're comfortable saying and doing. It took me a while to find myself. I'm still trying to find myself as not only as a wrestler, but as an individual.
So you were talking about this barbell that you were walking around with in Times Square, Brooklyn Bridge, a couple of weeks ago. What did you name the barbell, Mike?
So So the genius idea between myself and the few people that are close to me was to name, like, we were thinking, like, oh, what would be Barbie. So like Barbie, the barbell came about, and it's just one of those things where that's what it was. It just came. We figured, okay, well, this is the name that we can give this particular female barbell, and then it just took off after that. You know what I mean? So she has her own Instagram and Twitter account, which is great.
Is she available for shoot interviews too?
Yes. She should, in the near future, we gotta, she's right now. I guess she's tanning.
Okay.
She's in a tanning salon, so dropped her off, and hopefully we'll get her some open air time.
I remember a couple of weeks ago stumbling upon that page. I'm like, Barbie Bell, I think, or Barbie Barbell is her name, I believe. And I remember looking at her mouth. It's a new word. Oh, she's friends with she's Mike Law's manager. Oh, and
that's it.
Wait a minute. While everyone is working behind me to make the Tristen Law Show better, I wanted to take a quick time out to ask you to subscribe. If you're listening on Apple Podcast, rate the Tristen Law Show 5 stars and leave a review. Now, let's get back to the show. So how did you figure her into your persona?
And I have to thank, I have to thank my brother, Steve. He's always been just great with that sort of thing. I've always fancied myself a very good wrestler, worker, whatever you want to call it. And it's one of those things where I think because back when I first started, yes, I would have stood out, but for better or worse, because of my size. But today, because there's so many individuals that have that same height, and, not necessarily similar look, because I do present myself as different, physically and just my wrestling gear and everything. But I just needed something to grab people's attention. And it was very important for me as that performer to be like, okay, what's going to get people to look at me as soon as I come out the curtain? And, we just kind of shot ideas off each other. Next thing you know, like, what's something that you could carry around, like, like a crash holly, like that. I mean, let's call it what it is. And then I was like, okay, well, kind of like, what about a big dumbbell, a barbell? So I just started, I had a barbell, and I was like, okay, let's just make this a thing. And it's just something that kind of just brings people's attention, whether it's me coming through the curtain for an event or, a wrestling match or being in Times Square. Like that's going to get people's eyes. And, I've always believed in, like, I guess you kind of bring them in with the gimmick, but you sell them on the actual wrestling, so that's kind of the mentality behind that.
So you were talking about your brother Steve helping you out. I did mention earlier as well too that you followed in the footsteps of your uncle, who was a referee. How did the rest of your family feel about you stepping into the wrestling ring? My
parents were very hesitant at first. Like my mom, I mean, like at 15 years old, I'll say this, like, do I think back on the journey's been amazing, but I do think 15 years old is still very young to be learning wrestling, and look, the rings have gotten a lot better. I was wrestling in rings that were, I'm pretty sure there's wooden floors that have more give than some of these rings did. Where there were makeshift boxing rings or rings that, the nails would pop out. Like, it just was a different time. They don't take care of things. They didn't at the time the way they do now. So, yeah, I would say that they were very nervous. My mom, I remember one time getting knocked out cold completely and, waking up, getting in the car, and I just told my mom, yeah, Mom, I got knocked out. And I think after that, I took like a whole year off or something like that. Because even then I knew at 16 years old that I couldn't be taking shots to the head like that,
Right.
And I was still very green. I think as time progressed and they saw that there was fandom there and that, there was opportunity, you see that something that really brought a lot of joy to my life. And it was something that I wanted to leave as a legacy. They started more and more, supporting it. They always supported, but I don't think they were always happy about some of the outcomes of these matches, of some of the potential injuries.
My mom is probably the worst person to bring to a wrestling show. Like, she doesn't care whether I'm the heel or the face. My mother is just out there cheering. Sometimes I got to smart my mom up, like, hey, you're killing my heat here. Like, you need to, like, boo me. And my mother be yelling, get up, get up, get up. That's my mother. She's just crazy. But, my mother's not a wrestling fan. And I could hear her right now. Why you keep telling people I'm not a wrestling fan? Because you're not a wrestling fan. That's why. I read an article on you where you talked about one of your first experiences in a wrestling school, and you said the wrestlers lined you up in a conga line and delivered chops to your chest that hurt like hell. Listeners, chops are open hand slaps to the chest, just so that you're on the same page. Mike, how many of those did you take? And knowing what you know now, if you ran your own wrestling school, did you feel it's an appropriate rate to run a school?
Wow. And awesome. Kudos to you for actually, like, being one of the guys that does the research. I appreciate that very much. So again, I was 15 years old, man. The time and era of 1998 is way different. You couldn't get away with some of the stuff that you did back then now. Mm-hmm. And some of it you probably shouldn't. Like, I think there's certain ways to I guess gradually introduce someone that wants to be in the pro wrestling business without, like, obliviating them. For me at this time, wouldn't again take anything back about it, because to me, I knew what it was. You know what I mean? Even back then, as green as I was, I knew what it was. I knew that it was a way for them to try to test me to see if I would come back. Because It wasn't, I don't know, I knew it. I knew, like, that was the first time I was in the ring, and the first person I ever locked up with in my life in an actual pro wrestling ring was Homicide. Like, I tell the story because I remember wrestling him years down the line, and I told him then, the guy's been all over the world. He didn't remember that. But I remember thanking him, saying, well, listen, I know now what I knew then was you could have killed me in the ring, but you didn't. And I really appreciate that. Like, they basically hung me down in a trio wall, and they took my shirt off, and they just all proceeded to, like, chops, and then there was a lot of big guys there then. So, you felt every fingertip, hit you. And, I'm sure if I show my mom, I remember making sure I didn't have my shirt off at any point, that I know that would have been the end of my training, because, it was pretty gruesome. My chest was, bloody up. But again, going back now, yeah, of course now it's different, like, you can't do the things that they were doing back in 98.
Right.
It was more about not only protecting the business, but it was also about, okay, making sure not everybody could get into the wrestling business.
Yep.
And I think there's ways to sort people out now without going to that extreme. I think there's ways to train people and see if they really want this as bad as they do, So I don't know if that's really the proper method anymore. I certainly wouldn't, if I were running training facility, wouldn't go that route.
Right. I think me personally, I think that if you put a new student through the paces and, you put them through the drills, some of them will find it tough in the beginning, but those that actually want to do it will stick around, and those that don't want to do it will stick around. Like, like Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan got his leg broke when his first day in wrestling school, and Hulk Hogan came back, and who the hell did Hulk Hogan ever become? I guess one of the most recognizable names and faces in professional wrestling next to The Rock.
Not only in wrestling, but I guess in mainstream media. Like, if you don't know who Hulk Hogan is, I don't know. You're either no longer with us or haven't been born yet.
Right.
Everyone knows who that guy is. So again, I agree with you, man. I think now the problem is in the last few years, it's just like pro wrestling is for everyone. It absolutely is. Mm-hmm. I could not mention that or say that enough, but I don't believe that everyone can be a professional wrestler. There's levels, man, to it. And the problem we've had is that in an effort to be inclusive, which again, it should be, I truly believe that it's for everyone. My mom raised me to respect and be respectful of everyone, no matter what background and whatnot. But, to do what we do, to risk your body, the proper thing to do is to make sure that you're trained to do this at a high level, or just to do it in a level that's safe,
right,
and that looks good, like that makes it makes the people who pay their money be like, this is why I paid $20.
Right.
Not for something that's been half-assed done by someone who is only half-assed doing this at a half-assed rate. So that's just my mentality about it. Like, there are plenty of great schools now, so there's no excuse.
Yep.
Like you can make all the excuses now that you want about so-and-so or this type of training, but there's so many great wrestling schools out there, whether it's a Monster Factory or Creative Pro or anything like that. You have to know there's plenty of places that you can get proper training. So any other excuse, I can't go. It goes right over my head. I do not comprehend that.
I always tell people that want to get into the wrestling business, oh, well, I want to get into the wrestling business and, I don't have a lot of money. What's a cheap way to start it? Well, let me tell you something. I mean, if you want to be a doctor, you want to go to or if you want to be like a lawyer, you'd go to Harvard. If you want to be a doctor, you go to Yale or you go to someplace like that. But, you could always start out at a community college, but your education is going to be different. But if you really want to do it, you should go to those Harvards or those Yales. Like for me, I went to one of the Harvards and Yales of professional wrestling. That's how I started. I started out with Team 3D. I didn't finish with them because I moved out of Florida and moved back up here to the Northeast, to New York. So at least I can say I got a pretty decent foundation from what they told me. But a lot of these people come into these community colleges of professional wrestling schools and think like, okay, cool, that's it. Like there's still so much to learn. Like you can't, in my opinion, you can't really learn something from somebody that's never been there. But those people that but you can still learn something from somebody that's never been there. So, I always tell people before, when you're going to look out for a wrestling school, you want to make sure that it's from somebody that can teach you something. Okay, great. You know what? You want to eat steak? Don't forget, Dollar Tree sells steaks too. And Dollar Tree steaks are $1 and they're tough as shit. But hey, at least you'll get to eat.
Right. Exactly. And I couldn't put that analogy any better. I actually use that myself. So yes, absolutely. I mean, it's like, someone has hit me up the other day about that, saying that, this training place, they were like, oh, any suggestions as far as like training facilities and gyms and all that? And they were like, well, I can only go to this one now because, I'm not working, but, I really want to learn how to train. And I go, listen, you want to get a foundation. I believe that it's like anything else, an investment. If I wish I had this training in the schools available that they have now, because a lot of things are being done correctly. Mm-hmm. Back in 1990, it was the Wild West. You know what I mean? You kind of went anywhere that had the ring. And listen, I was very narrow-minded and very naive as far as training and stuff like that. I didn't listen the best. I learned a lot more gradually as I kept on going. And it's just one of those things where ultimately I had to learn the hard way. You know what I mean? I made a lot of mistakes, a lot of errors in judgment. But now with there being so many great training places and so many great reputable trainers, there's really no excuse. You know what I mean? If you're not looking to put and invest the money, then you just, I don't know. A lot of people nowadays, I feel, they just want to go viral or something so that way they can, become instantly famous as opposed to putting in the work and working out. Like I'm hard on myself, man. I will make no bones about it. I've held myself back more than anyone's held me back. I'm sure there's people who have their fine things to say about me, which, listen, I lose like that much sleep over it. You know what I mean? Ever. But I will be the most detrimental person when it comes to my career because I'm very picky about what I put out there. I'm very picky as far as how I'm portrayed. I'm very picky about how I look, and I feel that if more people were like that, there would be more of a introspective look at like, hey man, maybe I shouldn't put that out. Maybe it makes this whole thing look like bad. I look at some things, I go, why would you, I'm not going to tell anybody what to do with themselves. You do whatever you damn well please.
Right.
But I'll look at a clip and I go, that what I couldn't be associated with that. And it's terrible.
Right.
But
you know what too, though, it comes back to the thing that some of us, we don't know what we don't know. We don't know how to perform rocket science work or brain surgery because we don't know. So if those guys who didn't go to a Harvard or to a Yale, they don't know, okay, well, this match is the shits. You know, like you have, because you know, Mike, you come out of the locker room, you go back into the locker room after a match, and you ask everybody, hey, how's your match? What do they tell you? Oh, good match, brother. Brother, that was a good match. But like, you know, sometimes
I stopped asking years ago.
Me too. Me too. I don't ask anymore. I may ask one person to watch my match because I have it ingrained in my head that you should always have one person watch a match to give you some kind of feedback when you come through. Or if they can't give you feedback properly, hold the camera so I can watch it back later on. But you come back into the locker room, good match, brother, because everybody's like working you. Everybody's afraid to tell you, hey, look, you know, let me sit down. Like people ask me because, you know, I guess I can say it. My home is ECPW. That's where I wrestle the most for Gina Caruso. Yeah. And people always ask me, hey, can you watch my match? Because you got guys that's been wrestling for 3 years and I've been around for 10. So they value my opinion. So when they come to me back after the curtain and they say to me, hey, what do you think about my match? I always start it like this. Do you want me to tell you what I really think, or do you want me to tell you what you want to hear? And if you want to tell you what you want to hear, I'm gonna tell you good match, brother, and send you on your way. But if you tell me, hey, I want to hear what you really think, I'm not going to break you down and make you feel like a piece of shit. What I'm going to say to you is, well, okay, I saw that you did this. Explain to me why you did it. Because for some reason in that person's head, they may think that it's right. And going back to that video, they may think that what they saw was great because somebody worked them on the way back to the curtain. Good match, brother, good match. But it wasn't good. So I think like us older people, because I'm reading Rip Rogers' book right now. I don't know if you've read it. Great book. You can get it on Amazon. I'm plugging him, I guess, right? That book, it says something in that book that hit me, and I read that line today. It says that help the new people out because this business isn't mine. It belongs to everybody. And if I can help somebody in just a little way, it's going to help make the business better. So if I can lend any bit of advice to people to make them 1% better, and it's going to make the show overall better. Yeah,
and that's the thing. Like I have to agree with like there's people who want to hear how great they are, and there's people who are like, listen, give it to me straight. I rather do like I have a very tight-knit, close group of people that I do like. It's not that I won't stop. Like there's certain people you know who to ask, you know who not to ask. Like, but I think over time you start to think, okay, well, like there are times where I've had a match where I come right after in the locker, I go, that was abysmal.
Yep.
That was terrible. And I go right up to the promoter who's paying me, go down, and I apologize. I go, listen, that was not. You know, that was just not up to par to what the quality of me as a professional would do. You know what I mean? And that's the thing, man. It's just low professionalism. You know what I mean? Like, I've always prided myself on being professional in everything I do and how I take my approach. You know, if you want someone who's going to be professional, I'm going to take this moment to put myself over with that because that's just the way I've always been. You know what I mean? Just mentally, it's just like, yes, I love having fun. I love bringing emotions to the crowd. I love getting the fans to feel what's going on inside is legitimately what is going on in this universe we call professional wrestling. But at the same time, I need to let the promoter go, hey, this is what you're paying your money for. This is why you're paying me to do this here, to be here, and to combine brands with each other. It's just a level of professionalism. And, you know, to me, ultimately, like, as far as leaving this business away, yes, of course. I don't have to go online and put somebody over ad nauseum to get, you know, any type of Twitter buzz. Like, if I know you and the people that know, like the younger guys, and there's a lot of young guys that I speak to on a regular, they're gonna know. They're gonna know how I feel about them. They're gonna know, hey, you know, like, keep up the good work, man. Keep up the hustle. I see that, and I appreciate that. I appreciate hard work. I don't appreciate when people try to take the easy way out because I think nowadays it's very easy for people to take the easy way out. And I've seen it, and I've seen those people, and I don't just. They know that I don't respect them, but like I can see hard work and I can see dedication. I can see when people put in the time and not try to take the easy way out, you know, and try to be, you know, something that I've shared enough locker rooms. I've promoted enough events. I've been in enough locker rooms. I can spot the fake from the real, man. And, you know, I'll always be professional and I'll always be courteous, but, you know, I know who I don't associate with myself with. And there's a reason for that. And, you know, like I said, I'm like you, man. Like, there are matches where when I started, I was like, don't speak until spoken to. Keep your eyes open, your ears open, your mouth shut.
Yep.
That's the way I was brought up. And I'm not saying everyone, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just different from everybody else. But all I'm saying is that, unless somebody comes up to me and say, hey, Mike, can you watch this? Or can you, then I will take that invested time. But I'm not going to be, it's like mind-boggling to me when I'll go somewhere and it's like the blind leading the blind.
Yep.
Like you said, bro, you started somewhere in Team 3D. I think after a year or so, no matter where you're at, it's always good to change it up and go somewhere else to learn new things. The fundamentals, the first year or two, if you're bouncing around from place to place to place in the first year, I have to question things. I have to question you as a person and how you're dealing with things. And you know what I mean? Like, every case is a case by case scenario, but the first year, 2 years, your fundamentals should really be incorporated within that first school that you go to. After that, yes, you should start getting acclimated with different styles, different ways of doing things, because that's how you're going to grow as a performer, as a professional wrestler. But with that being said, I think a lot of times people, they train for 6 months. They either have a falling out or they don't want to train, whatever. They start getting bookings, and then next thing you know, I don't even want to train anymore. I don't have to. I'm going to learn on the fly.
Right.
That just did not happen back in those early 2000s. Because if it did, and you got in there with a veteran and you messed something up, the match would unofficially be over because they would just beat the hell out of you. And
I've known guys that beat people up back in the day.
Yeah, nowadays you couldn't find those guys if you wanted, or girls, because there were a few girls that were tougher than some of the boys.
While everyone is working behind me to make the Tristen Law Show better, I wanted to take a quick time out to ask you to subscribe. If you're listening on Apple Podcast, rate the Tristen Law Show 5 stars and leave a review. Now, let's get back to the show. But you were talking about wrestling matches, and you got these people out here who they wrestle their first match and they think that they're the hottest thing since sliced bread in a bag, and they think they're ready for WrestleMania. But what I want right now is for you to take us behind the scenes of your first wrestling match. When was it? Who was it against? And were you ready for your first match?
No. I don't even have to hesitate to tell you that I was completely and utterly not ready for that first match. I would have been bugging the promoter forever because listen, I didn't get better until many years later. You know what I mean? I progressed only when I started wrestling with guys like Sam Shields and Spiral BKNY got wrestled. So I'm very eternally thankful for those guys. They made me better. But first match in was I want to say 1999. I don't recall. I remember Jimmy Snuka and Jimmy Snuka's wife being there at the time. There was no psychology. There was no nothing. Ring position. It was abysmal. I did every move I thought I could do. There was just move, get back up, do another move. No pacing. It was abysmal. My strikes were terrible. I mean, I wouldn't even put that thing online if I'm sure of this video of it. It probably is. But yeah. I was wearing a mask too because in New York you had to be over a certain age to be on shows.
Right, you got to be at least 18 still.
Yes, and at the time, I was 15, I think, 15 or 16. And it was an underground show. It wasn't a pro show, so this wasn't a licensed show, but I was wrestling on a unlicensed show, and it was terrible. The guy wrestled, Mike Fitzpatrick, never, awesome dude. I'm sure he's a good guy. I haven't talked to him in years, but yeah, he faded very quickly after that. And it was terrible. It was abysmal. I should never have been in a wrestling ring at that point. I needed at least a good year more of sound fundamental training before I should have gotten anything close to a remote match, the first match. And it was terrible. I could rip it apart 10 ways to Sunday and it still wouldn't do it as much justice how bad it was.
It was like my first match. My first match, bro, was the shits. I thought, man, I had that match on DVD, giving it to promoters, wondering, why am I not getting booked? But after about a year of wrestling, 8 months to a year of wrestling, I went back. I'm like, no wonder you're not getting booked, kid. That match sucks. So it's still on YouTube, but it's hidden in the bowels of YouTube. You can't find it unless you have a direct link to it, and no one has the direct link to it.
Yeah, I know. It's so bad. It's never been on YouTube. Not that I know of. But I remember just, coming out and, I can't even recall what my mentality was after the fact. You know what I mean? Like, well, oh, that was good or that was great. I just remember being excited to finally get it out of the way. You know what I mean? It wasn't even in front of a lot of people. I remember, I don't even think my dad was there. Maybe he was. I don't know. But I remember it just being like, it was the pre-show before the actual pro show, and it was hours in advance because they didn't want the commission to get there to see that this show was taking place before a pro show with the licensing. But
right.
I remember it was like probably 15 people there, like in this big ass like gymnasium. But yeah, I mean, I didn't have any clue about ring presence. I had no really any ring attire. I wore a lucha mask with I look like a bootleg mass version of Mikey Whipwreck and in the worst insulting way possible. And and it just, to be honest, like no ring position, like it was just move. It was a bunch of moves, man. That's all it was. And not executed to the best of their abilities either.
I was having that match with somebody a couple days ago. I went down to the ECPW school because I was like, you know what? I think I'm ready to go back to the school now with this whole COVID thing going on. And I got a booking in a couple months. So I said, you know what?
Nice.
Let me go ahead and get back into the ring so I don't embarrass myself when I go out there. Because just like you, I care about what I give somebody for the $20 that they're paying. Because, like people work, and for some people don't make $20 an hour. So they're giving up more than an hour's worth of pay to see us. I want to make sure it's worth it for them. But what I told one of the guys that was there, he was brand new. I told him, I said, don't ever forget this. If you never learn anything else, your moves don't mean anything. I said, you need to put them into a story. I said, yeah, your moves are nice. You'll get a reaction, but you need to go ahead and put into a story to take people on that emotional roller coaster. I told him, I said, look, everybody's diving outside the ring. Yeah, dives are cool. But when you wrestle a guy like me and you're inexperienced, I'm going to position your dive that you only have to dive one time. And when you dive one time, you're going to get that reaction that you need from the crowd because it's only that one dive that matters. Most people don't understand that because they don't get taught that.
Well, I think unfortunately what happened is the paradigm is shifted. I think listen, you and I know it's sound advice. I think unfortunately because of change, I don't know if unfortunately is the way to put it, but I guess it's just changed in the sense that I believe in that mentality about making the moves. I still believe that you can get people emotionally brought in by telling the story with our bodies. That's like, if you want to go with the art of professional wrestling, that's really where the artistry is. It's like you're telling a story through, movement and such as that. And I'm not saying don't do a bunch of moves, but pace them where it makes sense.
Right.
But the problem has been in the last few years, I guess from that perspective, is that the people that are being looked at, the people that are getting those positions are people that are doing a million things 100 miles a minute. But then once they get brought into a level like in NXT, for example, where they're being where they can be told, hey, you got to slow this down. You got to do this at this time. Then at that point, it doesn't really matter because, yes, now they're getting paid such a livable wage that they can go and I should slow this down because I'm not going to last 20 years by doing this. I want to make money at a high level. With me, I think a lot of times people, and I'll say this, again, I made some errors in judgment at times where I should have been picking up the pace and doing more. I was doing far less to the point where even me, I'd watch stuff from years ago where I'd be like, God, what the hell, Mike? You get in there, be ferocious, go in there. And I doing the Ring of Honor camp and training with guys like Joey Ace and Azrael and guys like that. That brought out that okay, you gotta know what to do, put the gas the foot to the pedal, and just keep going and not let up. You know what I mean? There's levels of doing that as well where, yeah, like you can just subscribe to the, less is more thing. And that's fine. Like to each their own, it's all perspective, but ultimately, like there has to be a moment where, okay, like you're in this situation to not only win, but also outshine the other individual.
Yes, because
that's a competition too, man. People don't realize that.
Because I watched a match recently, doing research on you. I watched a match between you and Zombie King, Junior Flow, and I love wrestling Junior Flow because he's like, let's see, I'm like 6'1", and he's maybe like 5'7", and that fucking guy can jump so high. And I like wrestling smaller guys because I always say styles make a fight. And because he has a different style than me and all the other stuff he put together, I love wrestling that guy. If I can wrestle that guy every single night, I'd wrestle him every single night. But I watched the match that you guys wrestled for, Legendary Action Wrestling, that they named after us, LAW. I think I see what you were doing where you put your foot to that gas and then you guys stopped, you slowed it down, you allowed everybody to digest, and then you went into it again. And then you let them digest. And when you went to the comeback, you gave them all that again with your foot on the gas. And then all of a sudden, it was like, boom, it's done. Like, wow. Yeah. So that was a good match. But doing some video watch on YouTube as well, too, I saw that you wrestled over in the Dominican Republic. Paint the picture for everybody listening how Dominican Republic fans are different from American pro wrestling fans.
It's as if I took a time warp to what wrestling was here in the 80s, or, I'm not going to say the 90s because by the 90s already people were more, I guess, in tune or knowledgeable about what we were doing. But I would say more in the 70s, 80s. I was born in the 80s, so, right. But like the mentality out there, you have the police officer out there with the shotguns, and to the fans out there, it's still very legitimate. It's all still very, like, the bad guys are still the bad guys and the good guys are still loved and heralded. And for me, I was a complete outsider. You know what I mean? Like, I was a guy that came in as part of a tournament to represent the U.S. And the thing is, like, going into a stadium, and it's brutally hot as it was, because it was, I mean, as you can imagine, DR is a tropical location. It's brutally hot. I could tell that, like, the fans there, just from seeing them all line up, like, it wasn't a sellout, but it was for that area of DR, which is a very dangerous area. It was packed. I mean, I would say a good 350, and it was like a stadium. It was stadium like seating with the ring in the middle, and and like the backdrop was like there was nobody because it's like along a stage, and the mentality there, like I said, it's just like it's very real, and like like I remember winning the first match in the tournament that I was in, going over and like the people are like they're touching you, and they're like, and I would have a feeling that if there were more people, that there would have been even more like heat, if you will, on that. But I love it, man. I would be like lying if I said I wouldn't want to go back, because just the rings there, the most brutal ring I've ever been in in years. I mean, it felt like there was just nothing under there, and but the fans there are very fanatical, and they're very much into what we're doing as either people, as personas, as characters. So very appreciative of that. I would say Canada is also a great country to wrestle. Love Canada.
So where else do you aspire to wrestle internationally, and why?
I think, for me, even though like at times I feel sometimes it's been bastardized, Japan. I would love to wrestle in Japan. It's still something that, will eventually happen. Europe always, Europe to me has always been one of those places that, like, just stylistically, I'd love to get more. Like, I'm always learning, man, and I feel like it's almost insulting when people have been doing this for 2 years, act like they've been doing it forever, and they act like they can't learn. You can also learn from people who don't know what they're doing, because you can learn what not to do. So there's always a learning process, and I've always picked up stuff, even to this day, from people that either been doing this for 5 years or been doing it for a lifetime. But the thing is, like, Mexico has been a place too, man. Like, I see those arenas, man. I see the documentaries on CMML and AAA, and just I see that, man. And the fans there still appreciate what we do on that level. And Mexico, I would love to wrestle in Mexico. And like, if I were to put them in order, certainly Mexico would be up there. Japan, and I, for myself and my lineage, Puerto Rico would also be a great place, because having Puerto Rican heritage and being Puerto Rican, I think that's a big, check mark, something that I would love to do.
I read in an interview, Mike, where you said that you had terrible confidence even as an adult. I'm a lot like that too, because without a doubt in my mind, I know I could have wrestled for the big times, but I personally like confidence. Like, I went to a Ring of Honor tryout in maybe like 2013, 14, and I was still brand new, getting in shape and stuff like that. And Jim Cornette said to me, "Kid, for a big guy, you move, lose a little bit of weight, and come back. I want to see you again." And me being an idiot, I never went back. That's why I try to push these younger guys, go ahead and search out those opportunities. I could have been wrestling on Ring of Honor. But being older and smarter, I have a bit more confidence because I learn things differently and I understand things differently. How did you break out of the lack of confidence cage?
It was hard, man. Like before, people talk about depression and stuff like that. I don't know. Like, I know people are legitimately depressed, and I don't know if I could put myself in that position, because I don't know if it was just me being just a sad kid who didn't know his place in the world. But as I've matured not only as a person, but as a wrestler, as a performer, as an individual, I feel that a lot of that confidence was like, you know what, Mike, you have done a lot in your life, and you're not where you want to be, but it's not because of the fact that you don't have the abilities and you don't have the that desire. It's just because you never really had the confidence. I like anybody else had a lot of low points, and I made a lot of decisions that affected me negatively in the wrestling business. It was the in and out situation. Was I really in this? And then there were times where I took a year or two off. So it was a lack of confidence, but it was lack of direction. You know what I mean? I didn't have many mentors, coming up as a kid, I had my parents, but my parents they were working, man. Like, we were not born rich, and we certainly, so having two parents having to kill themselves and work, it was hard, because I didn't have coming up like, hey, this is the blueprint. You're not going to be able to do exactly this. This is not going to be your journey, but here is a blueprint of how to go about doing it. And, a lot of it had to do with being naive. A lot of it had to do with just not knowing any better, and having that lack of confidence at times. It was rough. It was crushing. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't know about marketing and stuff. I didn't know about, the different aspects about how, especially now with the change in the paradigm, it's not like you could be a great wrestler. Is it like there's plenty of amazing pro wrestlers out there? I don't think it really gets stated enough because of all the wackiness sometimes. But with that being said, I think that for me personally, it took me a long time to find the confidence. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of it too, surrounding myself with the right people, like positive, uplifting people who want to do this, who live this lifestyle, who want to be, who want to leave their mark, their legacy in the wrestling business. Having people tell you, like, not just like, listen, I can appreciate a fan's perspective. Totally. They pay their money, whether they like me or not, I can appreciate the perspective, whether they think I'm terrible or too small, or like, I can appreciate it, but I'm not going to take it the same way I took maybe like Booker T saying something to me, or Jay Lethal, or Rocky Romero. Like, there's a level of perspective that I can say, all right, yes, this person is somebody I can truly respect what they're saying because they're where I want it to be or where I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's, everything else. And a lot of the other stuff, you kind of just like, okay, whatever, like, I'll move on with my day. But I think for me, I don't know when. I think once I started saying to myself, I deserve this, not because of the time that I put in, because to be honest, I started wrestling again in 2015. I took a few years off of wrestling because I was promoting and I was doing things on the in the back end as far as helping build a company. But once that went down and in 2015, I started wrestling again. So that to me, I count a lot of that time frame more than I count the previous years before then. Even though I wrestled and I traveled and I went to different places in those early 2000 years, I felt 2015 and beyond has always been my best stuff. You know what I mean? And some of my worst because, I've just been doing, more stuff in general. So I can't pinpoint when I found the confidence.
Wrestlers do get better. Well, some wrestlers, some get worse. I've seen people get worse.
Yeah,
but a lot of wrestlers, I feel that we do get better as we get older. Like for me, dude, let me tell you, when I first started wrestling, like when I went to my Ring of Honor try, right, and I've told this story many times on this show before. I went to Ring of Honor try it, and they gave us 6 to 8. We went out there and we did 15 minutes. Yeah, I know. Yeah. And because I went out there and I thought I needed to do every single thing to impress them. And knowing what I know now, and I always tell the young kids, oh, you're going to a seminar? Let me tell you something. All they're concerned about is A, can you work? And B, do you have the fundamentals? And do you got some sort of character? They don't care if you can do all these moves in the world. Nobody's really interested in that. Just go work and stick to your times, kid. But
and coachability, like that's a big thing too. Like, whether you can be coached or not, like, I'm not going to really get into detail about the time I went to Ring of Honor camp, but I could see where their perspective, like, that's huge. It's a thing. It really is very important that amongst, yes, having some sort of like thing that makes you stick out to the general public is big. But I think ultimately, like, hey, are you coachable? Are you going to be somebody who's going to argue back when someone says the sky is blue and you're like, well, it's green? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
It's things like that really, as far as, and I'll also tell you this. I've been very hard-headed. It's something I get from my parents. Mostly my mother, got rest her soul, but it's just like, there have been times where I've been a little stubborn and and it's cost me. But listen, again, I'm constantly learning, and it's one of those things where I myself have to learn when to say when, and when things are, when things are the way they are, then I should be more lenient or more flexible. And that's the thing that a lot of companies, if you ever sit down with William Regal, he'll say the same thing too. And that's no different with the Ring of Honors, and I'm sure it's no different with the Impacts or, All Elite as well.
So what are your goals for professional wrestling?
I remember Booker T asking that, and I know, like, it came off as probably like a little hokey, and I think this is it, man. Like, to me, more important, like, yes, I listen, I consider wrestling my hustle, man. And it's a business to me, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate it's given to me. And I've traveled so many great places and met so many great people. I think leaving a legacy is very important. I don't know if my legacy will be in one of the bigger companies. Yes, I want that. Like, that's what I strive for. You know what I mean? I work my ass off. I bust my ass. I have passion. I have a heart. I have a love for what we do. You know what I mean? I don't know ultimately where that legacy will lead me, but I want to leave a legacy for people to watch years after I'm gone from this earth. And it could be like, and my family could be like, this is the type of individual he was. He hustled, he worked hard, he's entertaining. He was tough, he was rugged. He, you know what I mean? Like, he made you feel, you know what I mean? And that's I remember having a match with Logan Black a few years back, and I remember like two people pulling me to the side, and they were just random fans that were at the show, and they're like, "Listen, I don't know about any other stuff in there, but you made me feel something like it was," and that's what I strive for, man. And I don't know, like, yes, making money is an amazing thing, like we all do, like we're all here in this hustle, we're all like starving artists, if you will.
Yep.
But I ultimately want to leave behind like a huge, I'd say colossal, like legacy for everyone to look back and and even for me when I'm old and broken down, I can look back and be proud of that body of work that was put out there.
If WWE, AEW, or some other big name wrestling promotion was listening, tell them what makes Colossal Mike Law the best person to add to their roster.
I think it's a uniqueness, man. I think everything I stated about making people feel in their heart, like creating those memories and creating that individual, that character, Colossal Mike Law, that persona, that human being, whatever, that superhero, whatever you want to refer to me as, that professional wrestler, that sports entertainer, is to make the fans, make the people get emotionally attached and know that the struggle's always been there. The struggle's been very real for me. Like, I came from nothing. I don't have a father with a famous last name or a grandfather with a lineage. I don't have, I was not brought up with a lot of money. You know what I mean? Like, I struggled. I lived in basements with my parents. I slept in that car. It's one of those things where people will know that, like, I will not leave a shred of doubt that I've had a love and a passion to do this since I was a kid that burns forever. It doesn't matter, to me, the big money contract, that's a big thing for me, but I want the people to know that when they see me, that they invest their time, they invest their money in Colossal Mike Law, that they're going to get every strand of energy, every bit of piece of heart that I have, because I know, like, I wasn't, like, I wasn't raised to take the easy way out, man. I work hard and I put my all in, and you'll feel it. You'll feel the emotion. You'll feel that roller coaster of thoughts that I bring on this journey that we can all continue to be on together. And any company that decides to put me in knows that you're getting the utmost professional. You're getting someone who's going to go in there and is going to leave those fans wanting more. And that's it, man. Like, I pride myself in getting these fans to say, hey, I don't know about anybody else, but that match, my $20, $25, worth it every single time. And that's what I bring to the table, man. You hustle, a work ethic, a love that this business, I don't know if many people still have it. I know that amongst everything else, the love of doing what we do and putting on the best possible match and moments for the fans is, to me, the biggest thing.
I 100% agree with that, because, like I said before, $20 is a lot of money, and you need to make it worth it.
Yeah, you got to make it worth it. And all the companies out there running, like, I know we're coming through past a pandemic. Hopefully, it doesn't, come back again. Regardless of whatever you believe on your thoughts on it, I think right now promotions are running need to put their best foot forward.
Yep.
Put on the best possible matches and events. Put out the best possible content, quality. You know what I mean? Because people are spending money. People are watching now. There isn't a lot to do. Put your best foot forward, but also don't forget, like, you can get a hamburger from Burger King for $4 or $5 now. But then for me as a person, the quality that I would get from getting a burger from a Zygzep or something like that, where it's one of those things where you're getting a high quality end burger, it's a lot more fulfilling. It's worth that money. It's worth the investment. And I don't know if that's the best analogy in my, I just threw something out of nowhere,
no,
but ultimately,
I got it.
I think, we have to, as a business, start looking at it that way too. You know what I mean? You can put out anything out there and the quality probably not going to be the best, but always think about the end user, and always think about the person who's watching this. And like, is this worth not only the money, but is it worth their time? Because you can make money. You can make the money.
Yep.
You can always make the money back, but you can never make back the time.
That's right.
And that is very important.
So for my final question, what is next for Mike Law?
That's the thing about like this journey. I think it's really weird when I see people who have been doing this for 5 years, 6 years, and they're like, more now, and I'm not getting the bookings I want, and it's so tiring. Like, you know what? I've been doing this since 1998. Come at me when you've been doing it this long. So, as many times as I had my heart broken, as many times as I sat in bed crying myself to sleep, you know what I mean? As many times as I had those doubts before I went through a curtain to enter into a match. To me, the journey is the big part of the excitement to me, and I feel a lot of people are more so like, why did so-and-so make it in 2 years and I've been doing this for 7 years and I didn't make it? People's journeys are different. Mm-hmm. Me personally, I can't tell you. I know what I want. I know what I want to portray and put out there. And I don't know what I want to be my end result. I want to be a national. I want to be that guy that people like, I got to pay to see this guy. I don't care what it is, where he's at. I need to, like, this guy, Colossal Mike Law, is the reason I paid to watch this show. And of course, we won't want it on the biggest stages. I would be foolish to not throw that out there. But to me, the excitement is always this journey of what's going, I've learned to accept that. I've learned to accept that, you know what, not every, road I'm taking on this journey is going to lead me to the promised land. I've hit a bunch of, bumps in the road. I've hit a bunch of like potholes, but ultimately I'm healthy. I feel great. I'm back, to where I need to be as far as like getting back to myself physically where I want to get to. And that's the most I can ask for. I don't know what holds next, but I do know that I'm planting the seeds that I need to plant in order to get where I hopefully will need to get to.
Well, Mike, that was that was good. That was fun. I appreciate the passion that came through onto my side of the screen, because obviously we're doing this on Zoom. But tell everybody how they can find you and continue to follow you on your journey on social media.
Yeah, man, like, it's funny because I get hit up all the time. Listen, it's Colossal Mike Law. I know there's another guy out there, I'm not going to mention his name, that's just recently took that name, or not took, because I'll always be the one and only. But this individual, whatever the case may be, I don't even know if it's his decision, but regardless, at the Colossal One on Twitter, Colossal Mike Law on Instagram, you can follow me on there. All the links to my Pro Wrestling Tees shirt is there, as well as my store, frontier.com site, where you can purchase sweaters, face masks, all that good stuff, and support me as the guy who continues to put his body on the line, as we all do in professional wrestling, for your entertainment. Barbie the Barbell, it would behoove oneself not to mention my manager, Barbie. She's also at The Real Barbie on Twitter and Instagram. So, yeah, man, I mean, like I said, I'm just going to keep hustling, man. Keep working out there. And like I said, I'm just excited about where this journey continues to take me.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you go. You've had it. The Colossal Mike Law. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. Just hold on, because I'm going to give you my thoughts on this interview, and I'm going to tell you who's going to be here next week with us on the Tristen Law Show. Hey, you. Yeah, I'm talking to you. That shirt you're wearing is so not cool. Why don't you head on over to TristenLawShow.com and get yourself a new shirt? Not only will you be cool, but you'll also be supporting the show. What are you waiting for? Go now and get a hat too while you're at it. Thank me later. We're the show at TristenLawShow.com. Welcome back to the Tristen Law Show, and I'm Tristen Law. We are looking to promote your band or brand here. Contact the Tristen Law Show at TristenLawShow.com or send us an email at TristenLawShow@gmail.com for more info. Well, that was my Kayfabe cousin, Mike Law. Dude is cool, dude is confident, And with all the opportunity in pro wrestling these days, I see him going to the next level. Thank you for the time, my cousin, and I'll see you soon. I want to give you a little foresight into what's to come here on the Tristen Law Show. This weekend, I wrestled on East Coast Pro Wrestling's Christmas Chaos show, and two women, brand new to the pro wrestling business, tore the house down in the main event. Let me tell you, that was both their first matches. When I mean brand new, I don't mean like they had a couple matches underneath their belt. They were brand new. One of the ladies in that match, her name is Becca Scott, and she actually wrestled that match as a surprise to her boyfriend. It's a great story, and keep your eyes open, or your ears open? Just pay attention, because her episode is coming soon. But next episode, we're going to have one of the top 500 pro wrestlers in the world with us. That's right, we've previously had Mysterious Q on the show, and in case you forgot, Pro Wrestling Illustrated annually ranks the top 500 people in the world. But women have never been really invited on the list. Well, that was until 2020. So come back next episode for episode 20, featuring PWI's number 491, Molly McCoy. If you like this episode, I need a favor from you. Yep, I'm talking to you. Share this episode on your favorite social media platform, and don't forget to tag myself with the show. Don't make this a thing that you do. Let's make this a thing that we do. You can also walk up to a random stranger and tell them to listen to the Tristen Law Show. Yeah, they may think you're crazy, but who really cares what other people think, right? Fine. If you're worried about being judged, go on over to TristenLawShow.com and at least buy a shirt. People will think that you're really, really cool. Rate the Tristen Law Show 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and leave a review, please, because reviews mean a lot. Whichever podcast platform you're using to listen, please subscribe to get notified when new episodes drop. The best part is that it's free. Learn more about myself and the Tristen Law Show by typing TristenLawShow.com on your internet-enabled device for more info. I've been waiting for you until next week. I'm Tristen Law. This is the Tristen Law Show. Until next time, adios.